Hola a todos, me llamo Pedro Torres, soy portugués y que vamos a hacer esta charla en inglés, ¿vale? Que hablo despacio para tener la certeza que vosotros me comprenden. Que podría intentar hacerla en español, pero que no habría a comprender la charla sería yo. Entonces, que vamos a hacer en inglés, ¿vale? Entonces vamos a cambiar de lengua. So, hi everyone, my name is Pedro, like I told you, and this talk is called The Skyway. So basically is a talk about my experience when I worked in London, in England, and I thought that in this company we did Agile and Scrum and Kanban in such a peculiar way that I think that is really interesting for you guys to understand how we did it, not by the book, but with the practical experience and with the ups and downs of having our kind of own implementation. Okay? So what kind of inspired me to do this talk was the idea that sometimes we have, at least in Portugal, and I guess that sometimes here in Spain as well, that Agile and Scrum, it's a really interesting and cool new thing, but it doesn't work in our company. It doesn't work in companies like Iberdrola or Movistar. And why? Because they are really, really, really big companies with old structures, and so it's really hard to do the change. So, just for you to have an idea, in Portugal, probably what? 10 companies using this sort of stuff, Agile and Scrum, and if we look to the top 10 companies in Portugal, probably 1 or 2 max. So when I arrived in London, I discovered that everybody was doing Agile. Everybody was doing Scrum, regardless of how big and how old the company is. So when you look to companies like Sky, that you're going to see that is quite big, British Telecom, O2, Virgin Media, all the big companies, all of them already have shifted to Agile. And all of them were different. It was not probably easy to do the change, but the fact is everybody changed. And probably today in Portugal and maybe in Spain, if you like to do, for instance, pair programming, you're going to have a little bit of trouble to find some place where you can actually do pair programming. In England, it's really easy for you to do. Probably it's the other way around. So if you don't ever did pair programming, you're not going to find a job in London as a developer. Okay? So they are a little bit ahead of us. All of them are doing pair programming and all these cool practices, like I'm going to show you. Okay, so first of all, a little bit of me. Okay, so my name is Pedro Torres. I could be Spanish with this name. Okay, but I'm Portuguese. My father, his name is Fernando Torres, like the striker from La Roja in Chelsea. So he makes a huge success whenever he comes to Spain. And well, in my first 6 years in my career, I started as a developer. So basically, I was the worst developer I ever saw. That's why I became a project manager, okay? That's what happens when you're a bad programmer. I started doing project management in waterfall models, okay? The old-fashioned. And the thing was that I was a little bit tired of stuff not working because you created pretty Gantt charts and all that stuff. And after a week, everything was wrong because you had a delay or something changed. So you had like a huge Gantt chart, useless. But then you didn't tell that to the customer, so you can get a nice buffer and some extra time for changes. Well, basically, it didn't work. So I started searching online for how to do stuff differently. That's why I discovered Scrum and Agile. So I kind of get a little bit enthusiastic about this. So I took all the courses that I could manage. So a couple of courses from Scrum Alliance and one from Scrum.org, so that Ken Schwaber can be happy. Okay. And today what I'm doing some volunteer coach in a federation of project management teams called ITMA. And now I'm starting to work as a Scrum Master in Farfetch.com. That is basically a company a little bit like El Corte Inglés, but online, okay? So it's like a store of stores, but the twist or the unique gig that they use is that they only work with high fashion stuff. So if you want to spend a lot of money, you go there because everything is really expensive. Well, what about my experience? My previous experience, I was fortunate to work with these companies. Probably you know a couple of them, at least Indra. Okay. where I did learn a lot. Not really. I worked with Santander, that was a really good experience. I worked in telecom, and lately I worked with Sky in London. And I can probably tell you that in 6 months at Sky, I learned more than like in 10 years in Portugal. Okay, that's how different and how basically what a good budget and new mentality, a new cultural shift can actually do in terms of work and the way we do things. So Sky basically it's a UK gig, okay? So here in Spain, the best definition for you to have an idea what Sky is, it's like TV, okay? So the Spanish television and Movistar, okay, combined. So they are providers of TV, internet, and phone, okay? So they provide all these services, but we also have channels. So we are providers of our own content. So we have channels like Sky News, Sky Movies, and all that. So it's like we work in 2 different kind of markets. We have around 11 million customers. That's more or less everyone in Portugal. Probably we are not 11, we are a kind of 10 million. So this company has 11 million customers with 20,000 employees and with 1,000 of software engineers. Okay? So how big is that? Probably we don't even have a company like this in Spain. And they shift to Agile. So this is what I'm trying to tell you. Regardless of how big or how old is your company, you can do the shift. And it's really worth it. So obviously Sky is an Agile company today, or at least we try to be as Agile as possible, but we weren't always like that, okay? So we had like a really old, bad previous reality, like we only jumped to the Agile trend 3 years ago, but before that we were completely waterfall. So this kind of company before Agile kind of reminds us like old London. This is a picture of old London. So it was not a really good place to be, old, dirty, smelly. So, but we have like a huge architecture board that tries to decide everything for all the teams. We have huge Gantt charts of a bunch of lies. So the thing is, at least it didn't work for us. I'm not going to say here, this is not the goal of the talk, saying, look, waterfall doesn't work, because it does. But the thing is, in a market like telecom or like TV, it doesn't probably work, because the market changes almost every week. Okay? So you cannot plan something for 6 months or a year, because your competitors are not going to wait for you, for your waterfall model of 6 months, for you to launch something and then they are going to act on that. Okay? They are constantly doing stuff and launching new products. That's why we kind of changed, because we saw that with waterfall it didn't work for us. This is more or less the kind of structure that in the department that I worked looked like. Okay? I say this is a typical because we didn't define like an official structure. Like, okay, all the departments should work like this. No, that's not true. Each department should decide how they should work. Okay? So the structure is unique per department, because every department knows their needs, right? It's not up to one person to decide how it will work. So if you take a look here, the first role that we see, it's the principal software engineer. Well, this is not an Agile role, okay? Well, it's that principal software engineer. So the idea of this guy is basically searching for new cool stuff, technology-wise, and kind of way evangelize the teams in improving and using new products. So he doesn't push the teams to do anything at all. He only says, look, I saw this new cool continuous integration tool, you should use it. Or let's say that a Scrum team has a doubt on continuous delivery, the principal software engineer should be the go-to guy where they can actually have a good chat and understand what is the best for that team. Okay? We have delivery managers, basically the bosses of Scrum Masters, okay, which basically run multiple teams. We had Scrum teams underneath it with one Scrum Master. So we had full-time Scrum Masters, not developers, only a Scrum Master full-time per each team. Okay? And that is quite important, because if you start counting on the Scrum Master to do some code, but then you have like a bad week where the Scrum Master is away doing stuff in meetings or emails, you're counting on a certain capacity that it's not going to be accomplished. So the Scrum Master is fully dedicated just to help the team. So it was a good job. We had the DevOps team, okay, that's more or less standard now. And we have that team over there, the upfront analysis team. that name definitely is not an Agile name, okay? Upfront analysis doesn't make sense. But why have we created a team with that name? That team didn't exist in the beginning, so when we shift to this model, that team didn't exist. But whenever a big project arrived to the department, let's say let's launch a new offer or something like that, something big, we kind of struggle to understand which Scrum teams should be involved or not. Okay? Because each Scrum team has its own product, so let's say that I'm launching a new TV pack, which Scrum team should I tell? It's just the people that manage the offer, okay, the website as well, because I want to announce that on the website. Is there something for these guys? Or for instance, the My Sky team is a team where you can actually go online and set your preferences, okay? So probably a lot of teams are involved in this. And we had the Scrum of Scrums, but okay, who should be on the Scrum of Scrums? So we created that team, and hopefully one day that team is going to go away when we are good enough to understand that by ourselves, okay? So like I told you, each Scrum team runs a single product. There is no, I have a Scrum team and I have like 10 products with 10 product owners. Wrong. We had one team with one product and one product owner. That reduces risk and chaos, right? Because if you have like 3 or 4 product owners, what happens? I want this, I want that, I want other thing completely different. Okay, so who should I do first? Where should I go, right? With one product owner, it's much easier. And so this is like the typical structure. But at least, in my opinion, what I felt when I was over there is that the structure actually looked a little bit more like this. So you didn't have the head of department pushing you to do stuff, okay? It feels like you were supported all the time to try to deliver the best value to the customers, okay? So you didn't have no one pushing you days and say, oh, you're late, you have a huge delay, we must work extra time. Wrong. I never saw people working so few hours like we did in London. We work only from 9 to 5:30, okay? No extra hours, 7.5 hours a day, and it was more than enough to deliver the value that our customers deserve. Well, this is a really good expression, one thing that kind of amazed me. Who knows the expression, we eat our own dog food? In Spanish is, nosotros comemos nuestra comida de perro. And what does this mean? This means that we took full ownership on our products. We didn't have a fancy support team that should clean up our mess at midnight or when we put a bug in production. Our development team had all the time one person on call doing this, cleaning up the mess. And this idea, basically, when it was put in place, so when we started to doing this, bugs reduced a lot, because no one wants to wake up at the middle of the night to fix something, and launching new products on a Friday afternoon never happened again, okay? Why? Because one thing is actually, okay, let's launch this on a Friday afternoon, because on the weekend, I'm going to sleep and someone else is going to clean up my mess. But the other thing is, no, I'm not going to launch this on Friday afternoon because I want to go out at night and have fun. So all the teams were much more careful with this, and that basically reduced the risk. Because one thing is, okay, I'm doing some stuff, and other guy is going to clean up everything. Another thing is, okay, I have my ass on the line, so I'm going to be much more careful with what I do. Okay? It's basically ownership and full responsibility on what we are building. And to be honest, who better than the team that developed the product to understand where to fix the bugs? Okay? Makes sense for us. Other interesting thing that we did, and in a company like Sky, probably Iberdrola, and all that huge companies that you know, is that the teams are not working close to each other, okay? So probably you have like a Scrum Master, developer, tester, the Scrum team working together really close, okay? Hopefully. Sometimes we have people who work at home remotely, but usually they are co-located. Probably you have an analyst or not, we have, because our product owner was lazy, didn't like to write user stories, so we had a role just for that. Probably the product owner is in a different building, someone that is going to meet with you occasionally or when you have doubts. You have the UX and the UI guys, okay, the guys that create the wireframes of your product and the designs to look everything look pretty. Probably they are on a different building, in a different floor. And you have the content editor, basically the guy that goes to the back office and puts new content, okay? So this is more or less how it was in the past with us, okay? So different buildings, different floors, so we were a little bit distant from each other. If I want to chat with someone, I had to grab the elevator, go on the stairs, send an email. It worked, but not that good, okay? So we saw that definitely we could do something better, kind of reducing waste, okay? So we changed to this. One day we said, that's enough, let's reorganize all the building and make sure that if these guys work on the same product, they should work close to each other, regardless of being the Scrum Master, developer, or the UX guy, okay? So no more UX team and UI team and product owners kind of team where they should all hang out in some sort of fancy, fancy room. No, each person should be where the team is, okay? Because once again, the Scrum Master, developer, and tester, they need help to deliver value to the customer. So these guys, working close to them, help deliver value. That's basically proximity, okay? So let's eliminate waste. Let's make sure that these guys can do the best work. And that is basically by working close to each other. Other thing that we did, so we had Scrum teams, okay? Lots of them, one per product. And obviously they had their own KPIs, okay? So we had the traditional KPIs, so the technology KPIs, let's say product availability, in my case was website availability. We had the server response time, last mile response time, all that stuff that, well, basically the majority of the teams use. But we also had business KPIs. So for instance, in my team, we worked with the Sky Rewards. So if you were a Sky customer, we would give you free cinema tickets and all these fancy prizes just because you were a customer of us. It's like a retention tool. So our KPIs were attached to the business KPIs were attached to the team to make sure that we are not just creating software just for the sake of it, okay? Because the goal here was not to create software. The goal of this team was to make sure that our customers wouldn't leave to a different company, okay? Building software is not a purpose, okay? So you cannot solve a problem just for creating software. You must understand the problem, and the problem that we had was we had 1 million people per year leaving the company, customers, okay? Although every single year we kept growing. So we lose 8 million customers and we had to make more than 1 million every single year. How can you do that? In my team, with creating software, but not any kind of software. The right software to solve the problem. So attaching business KPIs to that team, they are not only worried in doing TDD, BDD, all that cool stuff that everybody loves, but also to make sure that the software that we were creating was going to solve the problems that the business had, the company had. Okay. That was really interesting. The other thing that we did is, okay, technology. Everybody likes technology, at least in Scrum teams. So why should we decide that every team should work in Java? Doesn't make a lot of sense, does it? Because each team is unique, okay? I had teams that work with websites, for instance, that have a good average of visitors, but I had websites that had a really low amount of visitors every single year. But let's say on my website, when we launched like One Direction's concert tickets, where all the teenagers go completely crazy, that we had a huge peak. Remember, 11 million customers. We didn't know how many customers are going to try to get tickets. So each team has its own necessities. So some teams work with Java, some teams work with Ruby, some teams work with Python or Scala, because it's not up to a person to decide what should be the coding language. Each team knows its product and should decide which should be the language that we should use, and all the tools. Okay, so it's completely up to the team to decide that. The other thing that I already told you, so create and maintain own applications. We took full ownership of the product. It's not just developing and maintaining. It's not fire and forget. The hiring. So the Scrum teams were responsible for hiring every single person that would join the team. So for instance, when I was hired to be a Scrum Master, even to be a Scrum Master, that all the team made the interview and then decided which should be the Scrum Master of the team. Well, at least in my opinion, that's really, really rewarding because, okay, I'm the Scrum Master of a team, not because I was imposed, but in fact because I was chosen by that team. The same happened to developers and to testers. So it was really interesting to know that every single member of the team was chosen to be there and not imposed by some management. Okay? 24/7 on-call support, so we eat our own dog food. And besides that, just to make sure that we are not doing stuff just because we want to have fun, or one thing that they now say in London, that is the CVDD. Okay, so I'm just using new technologies to look good on my CV. Okay, we had to present everything that we did to our peers, to the other Scrum teams, basically to solve two things. One, to make sure that all Scrum teams were up to speed with what we are doing, and basically to be challenged and to Scrum team say, okay, so you decide to go to A instead of B. Why? Explain me. Why did you decide to go to MongoDB instead of Cassandra? Explain me. And basically that kind of makes sure that all the teams chose the right technology and chose the right measures and right path, just because they really believe it's the best way to go, and not just to look good on the CV, or just because they want to try new technology. So regarding practices, extreme programming practices, all of us did continuous integration. That is something that we do not did in Portugal, okay? So no one in Portugal almost knows what continuous integration is. My previous boss in Portugal told me, oh, if you're working for the web, it's not possible to do tests. Okay, that's what they told me in Portugal. Okay, I believe that. I'm a good guy. Okay, you're the boss. You probably know that better than me. When I arrived in London and I saw everything being tested, web, regardless, Android, iPhone, I said, okay, at least there is hope. When you start using continuous integration and tests, it's exactly the moment when it's not bad luck to have a bug in product, okay? It's a really good luck if you don't have anything screwed up. Because if you don't have tests, how can you make sure that every single new stuff that you create is not going to mess up what you already have? It's just not luck. But with tests, at least you have a good feeling what is going to happen from there, okay? You use BDD as well, so behavior-driven development. That was one really interesting thing for the product owners, just to make sure they would test the user story. So TDD is a little bit more in the unit tests, okay? So I want to test just a specific bit of my code, and the BDD is a little bit of a test of the whole picture, okay? In a kind of a user perspective. That was really cool. We didn't impose this to the teams, these were best practices. And if you as a team didn't want to do that, that's fine. The only thing that you need to explain to the other teams is why are you not doing it? Okay? Probably you had a really good reason, that's fine. But the thing is, we must be aware of why you were doing that, and these were totally encouraged. TDD and pair programming. We already heard a little bit of pair programming yesterday. So we pair program all the time, at least when we are coding. And sometimes people say, oh, pair programming, that is way too expensive. Look, two persons doing the same job? Nah, we don't have money for that. But with pair programming, not only you reduce bugs, and at least with us, we forgot about code reviews. Why? Because one guy is coding, and the other person is reviewing at the same time. Okay, so we had a level of trust that the code was quite good. So instead of everybody staring to a fancy stuff like this, just looking to code that probably doesn't mean a lot to me because it was nothing that I built. With pair programming, we just forgot about that. And the only thing that we did also to make sure that everybody worked in the same piece of code was we rotated twice a week. Okay? So we started with a pair on Monday, and on Wednesday, the pair should switch. Okay? So I was working with you, and you were working with him. On Wednesday, it switched. Not the both of us, but at least one of us. So one person would stay with the code, and then a new person would arrive. Okay? That is really interesting because you kind of share all the knowledge, and everybody gets up to speed to what's doing in all the code. And everybody understands exactly everything that is happening on the team. And finally, last but not least, CD. Well, CD can basically mean two things. Okay? Continuous delivery and continuous deployment. Sometimes people kind of mix them both, but they are quite different. So continuous delivery is something that basically all the teams were doing. So whenever someone did a commit, it goes to the continuous integration tool, green, 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 and then it was automatically deployed until the last stage to live. So let's say, for instance, the UAT environment. Okay, so every time I did a commit, it goes straight to the stakeholders or product owners to check the code and see if everything was working or not. Continuous deployment, that's a totally different thing. Because instead of going just to development or testing environment, it goes straight to production. Okay? So how confident are you in doing a commit that would go straight to the live environment. Obviously, we had cookies restrictions, IP restrictions, just to make sure that people wouldn't see some feature that was not supposed to be seen on that date. But the truth is, we had teams that probably wrote more tests than actually were creating functionalities, features. Okay? So it was up to each team. My team didn't do that, but we had teams that actually was doing that sort of stuff. Okay, they were having fun, let's say that. That's why. Another really interesting thing that we did, we called the boomerang. So what is that? Well, we are developers, let's say that. I love to code, I work on my team. I could work in my team like for 1, 2, 3, 4 years, but the fact is, people get jaded, okay? So I get a little bit tired of doing the same stuff, working with the same people, using the same product. So one thing that we kind of tried to promote to avoid people left in the company just because they were getting bored was actually the boomerang. So let's say I'm on team A and I would like to try to work on team B. So I would work for team B for instance, 6 weeks, and team B would send someone back to team A. So we kind of just swap resources. It could be developers, it could be testers, it could even be an analyst, doesn't matter. So it's just like promoting rotation inside the department and even in cross departments, okay? So for you it would be nice, okay, so I want for 6 weeks to change my team to that. And at the end of the 6 weeks, if you want, you can go back. Or if by some reason you enjoy the new team, you stay there, okay? So it's kind of agreement. If you decide that you want to change the team and the other person as well, fair enough. And the interesting thing here with this sharing of knowledge is that the sharing of knowledge, sometimes people underestimate the power of sharing knowledge. Because the idea here is, if I have an apple, and you have an apple, and we change apples, in the end what do we have? An apple. Okay? I have an apple, I give you one, you give me yours, I have one apple. But if I have an idea, and you have an idea, and we change ideas, what do we have? I have 2 ideas, mine and yours, and you're the same. So it's good to share knowledge. It's a win-win idea. It's not just like you're not losing nothing by sharing. You're probably just going to earn something huge, some knowledge from other person. And that's really good. That's basically what keeps the company moving. It's not up to us to be selfish. We should share everything that we have, that we know. The goal is not to be a successful team. The goal is to be a successful company. Okay? To have good products, to have good customers. It doesn't matter if I'm on the best team and the other team doesn't know what I'm doing, because the company is going to fail. It's going to lose customers. I probably am going to be fired, regardless of being on the best team or not. So let's share everything that we do. It's really, really important. Well, I've been talking to you about Scrum teams, okay? So Scrum teams, Scrum. But I'm kind of lying to you because I should probably say Agile teams. And why? Because in my team, we start doing Kanban. It didn't work for us, and we did Scrum. Other teams were doing Scrum, they changed to Kanban. So besides choosing their own technology, each team decides the way they should work. It was not up to someone to impose Scrum or Kanban or Scrumban or Lean or Extreme Programming. Each team decided what was best for them. Because let's say, I work with 1 week sprints, okay? Not even by the book. The book says 2 week sprint, 4 week sprint. I work with 1 week sprint because I could not lock down features more than a week. But some teams work with more than that, 2, 3 weeks. Other teams just did Kanban. Some teams didn't estimate anything at all. Okay? I don't know if you're aware of the no estimates movement. So instead of actually estimating, you're just measuring the throughput, and you kind of have some predictability on when you're going to finish stuff. Some teams work like that. Some teams use whiteboards, okay, that big whiteboards with magnets and cards. Some teams use Jira. So basically, the idea that we had at Sky was that each team should work like their own startup. Okay? They decide everything for them. And it worked, to be honest. So all the teams were much happier to have the empowerment and the let's say, investment from the management to decide what's better from them instead of having stuff imposed. Okay? It's just like the Kanban system. People, instead of having the features being pushed, we pull stuff. We decide what we want to do in a restricted scope. Okay? So that's basically what it worked. The other interesting thing that we had was the Scrum Master, a line manager. Okay, so if I'm a Scrum Master, I lead by example. I'm a servant leader. how can I also be the line manager of the team? It's a little bit of a conflict, right? So I'm the boss, but I can manage by example. When I was in the interview, I said, look, I don't get it. It doesn't make sense. And when I started working, I understood exactly. So in my perspective, as a Scrum Master, I looked after the team as a whole. Okay, I look on the goals of the team, let's say create a really interesting product. But the thing is, a team is nothing by itself. A team is a bunch of people working. So as a Scrum Master, I looked after the team, but as a line manager, I look after each person on the team. So I worried about their personal career, their personal goals, okay? Because my personal goal would be completely different from the goals from the team, okay? The team has its own goals and their own purpose, but for instance, my goal would be to be a senior developer, okay? So I had different goals. So being a Scrum Master and a line manager allowed me to actually help the team and help each individual to make sure that they were happy. A little bit like just digging deeper, not just the team, but each person on the team. That was something that worked pretty well. But the idea here is, at least in my perspective, Scrum, Kanban, all that, in Agile world, it's really fascinating. It really works. But there is one thing, at least at Sky, that it was a secret, like the secret ingredient that we had when we were kind of cooking all this. We actually believed that everyone was doing the right thing, okay? You cannot empower someone if you don't believe that that person is going to give their best on the work, okay? It's a complete suicide. How am I going to empower someone that I think is lazy or he's not going to do the best at work? It doesn't match, it's not possible. So what we did was, I truly believed in every single member of my team that from 9 to 5:30, they would give their best to deliver the best for the team and for the customers, okay? So we believed in the people. That's the secret of empowerment, okay? You cannot empower people if you don't trust them, okay? That's one of the values of Agile and Scrum. The empowerment, trust, honesty, all that. You cannot do Agile if you don't trust your colleagues and everybody else. So we actually believe that everyone was giving their best at work. So this is the catchy phrase that we use at Sky to promote the company. So they say that they believe in better. And I would probably say that they not only believe in better, they believe in the people, and the people that they have. And that is probably why Sky is one of the most admired companies in the UK. So they are successful because they believe in everyone that is on the team and on their companies. Thank you. Do you have any questions or preguntas en español? I'm going to answer in English, but if you want, you can make the question in Spanish, okay?
What, in your opinion, didn't work so well?
What didn't work, or why
did not work so well?
What did not work so well?
Because I've heard really good things,
yeah.
But I'm sure there has to be something that you
yes.
felt you could improve.
So, pair programming sometimes is tricky, okay? So we heard that yesterday. Pair programming is like, oh, this is so awesome, two people working together, collaboration. But you have a lot of downsides on pair programming because I have my own personality and you have your own personality. And if we don't kind of try to understand each other and be tolerant, we don't work that well. Probably we're going to work even worse than we have just working on our own. So it was not easy to manage whenever someone came up to me and said, look, I'm pairing with that guy, and whenever I'm pairing, that guy is on Facebook on the mobile phone. So this is not just a kind of all happiness and everything easy. It's quite hard to tackle some issues. The other thing that was a little bit hard for me to manage is all the differences, the cultural differences that we had at Sky. I would probably work with just one or two English. Okay, so we had Indian, guys from Palestine, Polish, Irish. We are all completely different. Okay, I even have someone from the US. So we are all different backgrounds, and in the end, let's say Indians get offended with something that Europeans don't get. So we are all so different that it's really hard, and that's probably why the Scrum Master is a full-time job, because to make sure that everybody is happy and working and giving their best, it's not easy. You must manage a lot of conflict. Okay, one thing that was really funny over there was all the Indians spoke so low that it's really hard. Let's say we are in, they'll stand up, everybody together, so what's happening? What were you working yesterday? Yes, I It's not easy. Okay, what can you do in that sort of situation? Well, my trick also is to get a little bit closer, not to be rude and say, okay, so now I got it. Okay, so it's not easy. There are a couple of things that are quite tricky to manage when you have like such a multicultural company. You have a lot of challenges.
Yeah, I have a question. Thanks. It was a great presentation.
Thank you.
And my head was down because I was tweeting things you were saying. The question I have is about the boomerang.
Yeah.
I like that. And I wondered if you have a kind of transition in progress limit, like a width limit. Now, how many people can switch around?
So we kind of did like 3 to 3 months or like twice a year. We did this boomerang events. Okay, so it was like kind of a festival. And we say, okay, guys, this is an opportunity for you to change. Who wants to change? And we kind of gathered the teams that had someone that would be interested in going to a different team. Okay, so we gathered them all, and we kind of just did a kind of a lottery saying, hey, you're going to that team, you're going to that team, you're going to that team. Are you fine with that? Are we exchanging the same kind of resources? Because obviously if I'm changing a senior one with a junior, the team that is going to get the junior is not going to be that happy. So we kind of try to make the swapping to be fair so that a team wouldn't lose that much knowledge or experience. Try to make it a little bit more fair and making sure that not only I'm happy to go to the team or whatever, but also I'm going to there with being a senior, and the person that was going from that team to this one is more or less a senior as well. Okay, so we try to be a little bit fair.
Well, what about the number of people from the team who moved at once? You've got a team of
Oh,
seven.
just one person. Just
Only
one person.
one person.
Only one person. Oh God, no, no. Because if we had all the team left, that didn't work. So our Scrum teams or Agile teams were around 6 to 7 people. So we just had one person leading the team in each boomerang.
And you did that how frequently?
Twice a year, more or less, 2 or 3 times a year, not more than that, okay? Because if you move more than one person, let's say 2 or 3, then you lose a lot of knowledge.
Right.
Not probably the technology knowledge, because if I'm a developer, I work well with Java and Python, but more the business logic and all these sort of concepts. So just make sure that the team didn't kind of get down just because of the swapping. We would allow one person to go. And
Was the intent always to have them come back, or did they sometimes stay?
yeah, sometimes they stay, okay, but stay was not the majority, because for that person to stay there, this person should stay here. So
Yeah.
sometimes people say, okay, I want to stay there, but I don't want to stay here. So people should get back to their places. But sometimes I said, look, I enjoy more to be here, and that person as well. Should we trade forever, or at least until the next boomerang? Sure, fair enough. So we kind of had both scenarios.
Thank you. I would like to ask you something about the 24/7 on-call support.
Yes.
You have told me now that the teams are about 6 to 7 people.
Yes.
And do you integrate some people about working in 24/7 on-call support, or they're separate? Or?
No. So basically, we had the Scrum team with developers, testers. We didn't have like a multi-disciplinary team. We had good developers, testers, all that. And between the developers and the testers, one person rotating every single week would be on call. So being on call, basically, we had a lot of monitoring systems. We had Nagios, Gomez, all that stuff that you have on the market. And every time, let's say I'm sleeping and my phone rings, I see there is something going on with a web server or something. So I go through VPN, I connect to that, I just fix it, and that's it. And then on the next week, it would be a different person, just to make sure that it was not just one person doing the on-call, because that's quite exhausting, right? Because if I'm not getting enough sleep, how am I going to do a good job in the next day? So we would make sure that we had one developer rotating. So it's not just a developer to develop from 9 to 5:30, but by some reason, let's say we had some bug or we had some fire, then someone should wake up.
I thought that 24/7 was for answering calls.
No, not really. So let's say we have a bug, okay? Or actually our monitor would grab that and would send, let's say, a message, or if you can actually schedule a call to you, or by some reason, someone would detect that, let's say someone that was navigating on the website, and then calls the person. We had like a web application, and we saw all the person that were on call, and we grab the phone, call them, hey, look, wake up, we have an issue in this or that, okay? So that's how we did the stuff.
What about the rest of the organization? I mean, I think we have seen, maybe I didn't understand it, but we have seen the IT part of the organization. What about the rest of the organization? That it's agile. I mean, there is changes. You are maybe extending what is the cross-functional idea to the product management. So.
More or less. So, like I told you, it was 20,000 people, so I didn't know all the company. It was completely impossible. I knew that some departments were a little bit more agile than others. Others completely use waterfall and everything a little bit old-fashioned. This was more of a perspective on the software engineering community. Okay, but it basically depends on each department. We could have departments doing waterfall, and we could have departments doing this cool stuff. Okay, for instance, one department that we had. That actually works in Scotland, they do developments on the database of the customers. Okay, whenever someone calls from the call center, you go to the data of the customer, you see everything. They did releases just from 6 to 6 weeks, for instance. Okay, so they didn't deploy stuff to live every single day or every week. So, like I told you, every single department kind of acts like their own company and with their own decisions.
So I have a question that's highly correlated to this. So how do you handle projects that would impact several departments? This is where the misses here. Because you said you had a product owner for product, right?
Yeah.
So you must have had projects that impacted multiple products, right?
Yeah, so at least we use a lot of the Scrum of Scrums. Okay, so the Scrum of Scrums, maybe for the majority of you, is just like a fancy concept that Mike Kahn wrote on a book. But for us, it was more or less easy. So just have a big board with the kind of the projects that were running on the department, and then we have all the teams that were impacted and where their current status is. So what I imagine is that a little bit above that, you had also a Scrum of Scrums where you say, okay, so where is Department A? Department A is here. And Department B, oh, Department B has not started yet. Why? Why is that? Oh, because we have plenty of time for it, okay? So we had always someone above that, basically coordinating that.
Scrum was being used as a project management framework for projects, regardless of how many Scrum teams were impacted.
Yes.
So you had Scrum projects that impacted multiple Scrum teams, each with their own product.
Yeah.
And the product owner belongs to the product or to the project?
No, to the product. And what you have then is delivery managers that they have around 3 to 4 Scrum teams underneath them, coordinating that, okay? So that was more, I as Scrum Master just was worried about delivering whatever my team was asked, and then the delivery manager had like a broader view, say, okay, so the project is Project Lion, and we must deliver some, let's say, cool functionality where I can go online and say, look, I need some help because my TV is not working, okay? What is impacting that? You must have somewhere like a website where you can do that. You must have someone that actually is going to grab that information and put it on the database, so it's not a different department, different team. There's probably someone, let's say an engineer, that is going to the customer's house and is going to fix the TV. Okay, so we had a lot of teams and probably a lot of departments being involved in a single project that could probably be as simple as creating a web form on the website, but it actually touches the call center, the engineers, everyone.
So the question is, do you have a product owner for that project? Do you have a project manager?
The delivery manager. Okay. So you have product owner.
Projects.
Yes. So delivery manager was more of a project manager. Okay. They kind of own the Scrum teams, but when it was something above that, then the delivery manager coordinates to make sure that all the Scrum teams were rightly involved and up to speed, and then he reported to the head of department or to whatever it is, and look, this big project, this transversal project is on day, it's not on day, that team is delayed because it haven't started yet, so it was a little bit above what I was doing over there.
So, very good presentation, enjoyed it a lot. Can you tell me a little bit about the reward system? How you, are there performance reviews for people? What is the reward system like for the development team?
The rewards for
The Scrum teams, you use a line manager, you use a Scrum Master, how did it work?
So what we did over there, a little bit like, I don't know if it's a little bit old-fashioned or not, so we had regular one-to-ones, So besides being a Scrum Master as a line manager, I had one-to-ones with the team. So I would sit with each person and say, look, I know in the retrospective how the team is going, okay, because in a retrospective, I'm not telling stuff by myself, I'm telling a little bit more on behalf of the team, but up to you as a person, what's happening? What do you think was a bad thing that happened this month? Or what was the worst thing? What did you like the most? What was the thing that you would change if you had the power to? So we had these one-to-ones. Well, some line managers did it like twice a week, from 2 to 2 weeks. Some did it once a month. So again, it was nothing imposed. It was a good practice. So besides the retrospective, I would sit with every single person and I would chat with them to make sure they were happy. And probably, I don't know if it's because I'm Latino or not, one thing that we did was we had firms, okay, so it's like people from the company, and we had outsourcers, okay, they call contractors in England. And so obviously, as a line manager, I should only worry about firms because they are the employees from Sky. Contractor is not, okay, can leave the other day. One thing that I'm imposing to myself was I'm going to do the one-to-one, not only to the employees, but also to the contractors. And why? Because we were all on the same team. Why should I treat people differently just because of the contract? Okay, so I did that. And it worked pretty well.
Yes. As a line manager, I understand you have also responsibilities of hiring and firing people. Or at least, well, you say you manage careers in your way.
Yeah.
In a more traditional manager way. So how do you avoid that role of yours and having, the so-called guns to interfere as a Scrum Master? Or for example, how you are presenting in a retrospective, for example, how you interfere with the retrospective itself?
So at least what I did was I acted much more like a Scrum Master than a line manager. Okay? So I tried more to be a friend of every single person in my team and probably the boss. Because if you're the boss, you're always keeping kind of a certain distance. And if you're more than a friend, it's much easier for someone to talk to you and actually say, look, I have this problem, I have this or that. So, and the other thing that actually did the trick was I didn't have the power to hire and fire anyone. That was delegated to the team. The team decided that. I'd say if the team came to me and said, look, we don't like the analyst writes crappy user stories, he should go away. We would fire him, or at least move him to another team. Okay, so it was not up to me. As a line manager, what I kind of did was, let's say that you would like to go to a really cool conference here in Spain in Bilbao. I would be the person that you would go to, and I would make sure that the department would pay you for that. Okay, so I was more that line manager, not the hiring and firing bad cop. Okay, so I tried to be always a kind of a good cop here. So I guess that the hiring and firing being completely dropped from me kind of make everything a little